Jake Morrison's weathered hands froze mid-reach toward the fence gate, his coffee thermos slipping from numb fingers and shattering against the Texas dirt. The sound that escaped his throat wasn't quite human, a strangled gasp that seemed torn from his very soul as he witnessed the impossible scene unfolding in his pasture. 25 feet of pure nightmare had wrapped itself around Thunder's massive frame, the Burmese python's muscular coils contracting with deadly precision around his prize Brahman bull's neck and chest. Sarah Chen, who'd been checking fence posts nearby, dropped her veterinary bag and stumbled backward, her scream piercing the humid afternoon air like a blade. The metallic clang of scattered medical instruments echoed across the ranch as Thunder's desperate bellowing filled the silence between heartbeats. This was Maria's final gift to him, the gentle giant she'd bottle-fed as an orphaned calf, now fighting for every labored breath. Jake's mind flashed to his late wife's words. "Promise me you'll protect him, Jake. He's more important than you know." "Sweet Jesus, help me," Jake whispered, grabbing the nearest fence post like a weapon. Who had unleashed this terror on his land? And could Thunder survive what was clearly no accident? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The sprawling 600-acre Morrison Ranch had been Jake's sanctuary for 30 years, a testament to 3 generations of blood, sweat, and unwavering determination carved from the unforgiving Texas soil outside Beaumont. At 54, Jake Morrison carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who'd seen too much. First in the jungles of Vietnam, then in the daily struggles of keeping a family legacy alive against impossible odds. Jake's weathered face told stories of countless dawns spent mending fences and sleepless nights nursing sick cattle through brutal storms. His calloused hands, permanently stained with honest work, trembled slightly these days. Not from age, but from the crushing weight of $800,000 in medical debt that threatened to devour everything his father and grandfather had built. The cancer had taken Maria 2 years ago, but not before draining their life savings and mortgaging their future to pay for treatments that ultimately failed. Thunder wasn't just any bull. He was the living embodiment of Maria's final act of love. When the magnificent Brahman calf had been rejected by his mother and left to die, Maria had insisted they bottle feed him through endless nights. "This one's special, Jake," she'd whispered during one of those midnight vigils, her eyes already hollow from chemotherapy. "Promise me you'll never give up on him." Thunder's distinctive black coat, shot through with rich reddish-brown markings, made him a striking figure among the herd. But it was his gentle intelligence that had captured Maria's heart. The ranch itself sat on rolling hills dotted with ancient oak trees, their branches providing blessed shade during the brutal Texas summers. Wooden fences, some original from Jake's grandfather's time, crisscrossed the property in a patchwork of repair and renewal. The old farmhouse, with its wraparound porch and peeling white paint, had sheltered 3 generations of Morrisons through droughts, floods, and heartbreak. Now, with foreclosure looming in just 30 days, Jake faced the unthinkable prospect of losing everything. The bank had been patient, but patience had limits, and Jake's luck had run dry. Thunder represented his last hope, not just as valuable breeding stock, but as the final connection to Maria's memory. Every morning, Jake would find the bull waiting by the gate, those intelligent brown eyes seeming to understand the weight of their shared burden. The irony wasn't lost on Jake that on this scorching August afternoon, when the very future of the Morrison legacy hung in the balance, death had come slithering from the bayou to claim the one thing he couldn't bear to lose. As he gripped the fence post tighter, Jake knew that saving Thunder meant saving himself and honoring Maria's final wish. The steel fence post felt impossibly heavy in Jake's trembling hands as he sprinted toward the nightmare unfolding before him. Thunder's massive 2,000-pound frame shuddered with each labored breath, the python's coils tightening like a living noose around his neck and chest. The bull's distinctive humped shoulders, normally a symbol of strength and endurance, were compressed flat against his spine by the serpent's crushing embrace. "Get away from him!" Jake roared, bringing the post down hard against the python's muscular body. The impact sent shock waves up his arms, but the snake barely flinched. If anything, the blow seemed to trigger an even tighter constriction. Thunder's eyes rolled white with terror, pink foam beginning to fleck his muzzle as his breathing became increasingly desperate. For 20 agonizing minutes, Jake battled the massive Burmese python with everything he had. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with tears of frustration and fear. The snake's tail lashed out viciously, catching Jake across the ribs and sending him sprawling into the dirt. His body ached from the relentless assault, but Thunder's weakening struggles drove him back to his feet again and again. Sarah Chen worked frantically beside him, her veterinary training kicking in as she tried to find a way to help without making the situation worse. "The coils are cutting off blood flow to his brain," she called out, her voice tight with professional concern. "We need to get pressure off his carotid arteries now, or we're going to lose him." Jake's military training from Vietnam suddenly surfaced through the panic. He remembered something about leverage, how the smallest force, applied at the right point, could move mountains. Instead of attacking the snake's body, he began working the fence post like a crowbar, trying to pry apart the coils at Thunder's neck where the major blood vessels ran. It was delicate, dangerous work. Too much force, and he might crush Thunder's windpipe himself. Too little, and the bull would suffocate. Inch by excruciating inch, Jake worked the post between the python's body and Thunder's neck. The serpent writhed violently, sensing its grip loosening, but Jake held firm despite the burning pain in his shoulders and back. "Come on, boy," Jake whispered desperately to Thunder, his voice cracking with emotion. "Maria's counting on us. Don't you dare give up on me now." With a sound like a massive zipper being undone, the python's coils began to separate. Thunder, sensing freedom, summoned his last reserves of strength and surged forward, breaking free from the remaining loops. The python, now more interested in escape than prey, slithered rapidly toward the nearby creek and disappeared into the murky water. Thunder collapsed heavily in the grass, his sides heaving like massive bellows as he fought to recover from his ordeal. Jake knelt beside the bull, his own hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Deep impressions marked Thunder's hide where the python's coils had nearly crushed the life from him, and his breathing remained labored and shallow. The sound of approaching vehicles cut through the afternoon air, 3 county trucks kicking up dust clouds as they roared down the ranch's gravel driveway. Jake looked up sharply, confusion mixing with his relief. He hadn't called anyone yet. How could they have known about the attack so quickly? Marcus Caldwell emerged from the lead truck with an expression of exaggerated concern that didn't quite reach his cold gray eyes. At 48, Marcus carried himself with the sharp-edged confidence of a man who'd clawed his way up from nothing, his thin frame and angular features giving him an almost predatory appearance. Behind him came 2 other county officials, their clipboards and cameras ready. "Well, well," Marcus said, surveying the scene with what appeared to be professional interest. "Heard there was some kind of exotic animal incident out here. Lucky we got here when we did." His gaze swept over Thunder's prone form with an appraiser's precision, lingering on the bull's distinctive markings and impressive size. Jake struggled to his feet, still catching his breath. "How did you hear about it so fast? I haven't called anyone yet." Something in Marcus's tone made his skin crawl, too smooth, too prepared, as if he'd rehearsed these lines. "Oh, we've been tracking reports of a large snake in the area," Marcus replied smoothly, pulling out his clipboard. "Dangerous situation, really. These exotic pet owners, snake gets too big, they just release it into the wild." He paused, his eyes scanning Jake's property with calculating interest. "Of course, this creates a public safety hazard." Might need to conduct a full investigation, maybe quarantine the property until we're sure there aren't any more dangerous animals around." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Quarantine meant no cattle sales, no income, and certain foreclosure. As he looked into Marcus's cold eyes, Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the approaching evening. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The days following the python attack blurred together in a haze of veterinary visits, legal paperwork, and growing dread. Sarah Chen had insisted on staying at the ranch to monitor Thunder's recovery, setting up a makeshift clinic in Jake's barn. Her gentle hands worked magic on the bull's injuries, cleaning and dressing the deep impressions left by the python's coils with a tenderness that reminded Jake painfully of Maria's touch. "He's stronger than he looks," Sarah murmured on the third evening, running her fingers along Thunder's neck, where the worst damage had occurred. "These Brahmins are incredibly resilient. The scars will fade, but it'll take time." She looked up at Jake with eyes that seemed to hold secrets. "Just like people, I suppose." Jake found himself drawn to this quiet woman who'd appeared at his darkest hour like an answer to prayer. Sarah moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent decades healing wounded creatures, but there was something else, a sadness that mirrored his own, as if she too carried the weight of profound loss. On the fourth night, as they sat on the porch watching Thunder graze peacefully in the moonlight, Sarah's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. "Jake, I haven't been entirely honest with you about why I'm here." Her voice trembled with emotion she'd been holding back. "My name isn't Sarah Chen. It's Sarah Martinez. Maria was my sister." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He stared at this woman he'd been growing to care for, searching her features for traces of his beloved wife. Now that she'd said it, he could see the similarities, the same gentle curve of the jaw, the same compassionate eyes that seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. "She never mentioned having a sister," Jake said quietly, his voice thick with confusion and betrayal. "We had a falling out years ago over something so stupid I can barely remember what started it." Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks. "Pride, mostly. She tried to reach out when she got sick, but I was too stubborn to answer her calls. By the time I swallowed my pride and came to Texas, she was already gone." Jake felt his world tilting on its axis. "Then why are you here now? What do you want from me?" "Answers," Sarah whispered. "The official report said Maria died from complications during routine surgery, but something never felt right about it. A healthy woman doesn't just develop sudden blood clotting issues during a simple procedure. I came here to find out what really happened to my sister." Before Jake could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles cut through the night air. Marcus Caldwell's county truck pulled into the driveway, followed by a sheriff's deputy and what appeared to be a court officer. Even in the dim porch light, Jake could see the official documents in Marcus's hand. "Mr. Morrison?" Marcus called out with false sympathy as he approached. "Sorry to disturb you so late, but we have some urgent matters to discuss regarding the exotic animal incident." He held up a thick sheaf of papers. "Court order for immediate quarantine of your property pending a full investigation. We'll need to remove all livestock for health and safety testing." Jake's blood ran cold. "You can't do this. Thunder's still recovering from his injuries." "Actually, Mr. Morrison, the court feels that's exactly why we need to act quickly. That bull may have been exposed to exotic pathogens from contact with the python. He poses a potential disease risk to other cattle in the region." Marcus's smile was razor thin. "Of course, if you're willing to sell him to the county for proper disposal, we could expedite the process. Save everyone time and money." "How much?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be insulting. 50,000, cash, today." Jake nearly laughed at the absurdity. Thunder was worth at least 10 times that amount as breeding stock. But in his current financial situation, 50,000 might as well have been 50 million. I need time to think about it. I'm afraid time is something you don't have, Mr. Morrison. Marcus gestured to the court officer. 24 hours to decide. After that, we seize the animal under emergency health protocols. As the county vehicles disappeared into the night, Jake slumped into his porch chair, feeling the weight of 30 years crushing down on his shoulders. Sarah moved closer, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "There's something else," she said softly. "After Maria died, I hired a private investigator to look into her medical records. He found some irregularities in her blood work, traces of medication she wasn't prescribed. Someone was slowly poisoning her with blood thinners, making it look like a natural clotting disorder." Jake's head snapped up. "You're saying someone murdered my wife?" "I'm saying someone wanted her dead, and they were patient enough to make it look like an accident." Sarah pulled a small device from her pocket, a GPS tracker, its red light blinking steadily. "I found this hidden in Thunder's collar yesterday. Maria installed it before she died. She was tracking something, or someone was tracking Thunder." The implications hit Jake like a sledgehammer. If Maria had been murdered, and if Thunder was being tracked, then the Python attack wasn't random. Someone had orchestrated this entire nightmare, targeting the one thing Jake couldn't bear to lose. "We need to find out who's behind this," Jake said, his voice hardening with determination. "And we need to find out fast before they finish what they started." As if summoned by his words, another vehicle approached, an old pickup truck with its headlights dimmed. A young man climbed out, his movements careful and deliberate. Even in the darkness, something about his build and posture struck Jake as familiar. The stranger stepped into the porch light, and Jake's world stopped spinning. Standing before him was Danny Morrison, his adopted son, supposedly killed in Afghanistan 5 years ago, now very much alive but staring at Jake with no recognition in his eyes. Danny Morrison stood in the porch light like a ghost materialized from Jake's deepest prayers and darkest nightmares. At 28, he retained the lean, muscular build that had made him such an effective Army Ranger, but his eyes held a vacant quality that chilled Jake to the bone. The son who had once called him Pop and helped him repair fences on lazy summer afternoons now looked at him with the polite indifference of a complete stranger. "Excuse me, sir," Danny said, his voice carrying the formal tone of someone following a script. "I'm here on behalf of Marcus Caldwell, County Animal Control. We need to conduct a preliminary health assessment of your bull before tomorrow's removal." He held up a veterinary kit that looked suspiciously professional. "Mr. Caldwell sent me to take blood samples and document any visible injuries." Jake's heart hammered against his ribs as he fought to keep his voice steady. "And you are?" "Daniel Martinez, sir. Veterinary technician with the county." The name hit Jake like a physical blow. Martinez, Sarah's surname. Had someone deliberately given Danny this false identity? Or was it just cruel coincidence? "I know it's late, but Mr. Caldwell wants this handled quickly to minimize stress on the animal." Sarah moved closer to Jake, her hand finding his arm in a gesture of support. Jake could feel her trembling as she, too, recognized something familiar in this young man's features. The same strong jawline that had belonged to Maria, the same gentle hands that had once helped Jake deliver calves during difficult births. "Of course," Jake managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thunder's in the main pasture. I'll show you the way." As they walked toward the fence where Thunder grazed peacefully in the moonlight, Jake studied his son's movements. Danny walked with a slight limp that hadn't been there before, and his left hand bore fresh scars that spoke of recent trauma. But it was the vacant way he looked at the ranch, at the home where he'd grown up, that broke Jake's heart most completely. Beautiful animal, Danny commented as he approached Thunder with practiced ease. The bull, who had been skittish around strangers since the python attack, immediately calmed under Danny's touch. Brahmin breed. Looks like exceptional bloodline. Must be worth quite a bit. He's priceless to me, Jake said, watching his son's hands move over Thunder's hide with the same gentle confidence he'd inherited from Maria. My wife picked him out as a calf. Said he was special. Something flickered across Danny's face. A momentary confusion, as if Jake's words had triggered a distant memory struggling to surface. Your wife, is she? She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. Jake's voice cracked despite his efforts to stay composed. Danny's hands stilled on Thunder's neck, and for a moment the professional mask slipped. I'm sorry for your loss, sir. I think my mother died too. I can't remember much from before my accident. Jake had to turn away to hide the tears streaming down his face. The accident, that must be how Danny's memory loss had been explained to him. But what kind of accident could steal 5 years of a man's life and leave him working for the very people who were destroying his father's world? Over the following days, Jake and Sarah worked frantically to uncover the truth about Maria's death while trying to find a way to save Thunder and the ranch. Sarah's investigative skills, honed by years of methodical veterinary work, proved invaluable as they pieced together a timeline of events leading up to Maria's suspicious death. Look at this, Sarah said, spreading medical records across Jake's kitchen table. Maria's blood work shows increasing levels of warfarin over a 6-month period before her surgery. That's a blood thinner, completely contradictory to the clotting disorder they claimed killed her. Jake studied the documents with growing rage. Someone was slowly poisoning her, making her more susceptible to bleeding complications during surgery. And look at the timing. Sarah pointed to a calendar marked with Maria's appointments. Her condition started deteriorating right after she began asking questions about Thunder's breeding documentation. She'd been researching his bloodline, trying to verify his genetic heritage. The implications were staggering. Thunder wasn't just valuable. He was potentially worth millions if his bloodline was as rare as Maria had suspected. Someone had killed her to prevent that discovery, and now they were using legal manipulation to steal the bull anyway. Their investigation was interrupted by Danny's return, this time accompanied by Marcus himself. The county supervisor wore an expression of smug satisfaction as he surveyed Jake's kitchen, his eyes lingering on the financial documents spread across the counter. Mr. Morrison, Marcus said with false concern, I'm afraid we've discovered some irregularities in Thunder's health documentation. Seems his vaccination records are incomplete, and there are questions about his breed certification. We're going to need to expedite his removal for everyone's safety. Jake noticed Danny standing slightly behind Marcus, his face showing signs of distress as he looked around the kitchen. Something about the familiar surroundings seemed to be triggering memories just beneath the surface of his consciousness. Danny, Jake said softly, unable to stop himself from using his son's real name. Do you remember this place at all? Danny's head snapped up, confusion clouding his features. Why did you call me that? Because that's your name, Jake said, ignoring Marcus's sharp look of warning. Your real name is Danny Morrison, and this is your home. You used to help me fix the fence by the south pasture every summer. You had a dog named Ranger. We named the bull after him when you went away. That's enough. Marcus stepped forward, his hand moving to Danny's shoulder in a gesture that looked protective but felt possessive. Daniel has been through enough trauma without having confused old men filling his head with fantasies. But Danny was staring at Thunder through the kitchen window, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. I remember a dog, a golden retriever. He used to follow me around the farm. His voice was barely a whisper. And there was a woman who sang while she cooked. She made the best apple pie in 3 counties. That was Maria, Jake said gently. Your adoptive mother. She loved you like her own son. Stop! Marcus's facade was cracking, revealing the desperation beneath. Daniel, we need to leave now. This man is trying to manipulate you. But Danny wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at a framed photograph on the kitchen wall. A picture of him, Jake, and Maria from his high school graduation. His hand moved unconsciously to touch a scar on his forehead, and Jake remembered how he'd gotten it falling from the barn loft when he was 12. Pop, Danny whispered, the childhood nickname slipping out before he could stop it. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge across 5 years of loss and lies. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing Danny's arm with enough force to leave bruises. We're leaving, now. Marcus's mask had completely fallen away, revealing the cold, calculating predator beneath. And if you try to interfere with county business again, Morrison, you'll find yourself facing federal charges for obstruction of justice. As they drove away, Jake watched his son looking back through the truck's rear window, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. The boy he'd raised from age 10, who'd called him Pop and helped him build the life he was now fighting to save, was trapped in the web of lies that was slowly destroying everything Jake held dear. That night, Sarah found Jake sitting on the porch, staring out at Thunder's silhouette in the moonlight. We're going to get him back, she said firmly. Both of them, Danny and Thunder. How? Jake's voice was hollow with exhaustion. Marcus has the law on his side, and now he knows that Danny's starting to remember. He'll move faster, make sure there's no evidence left behind. Then we move faster too. Sarah pulled out her cell phone and scrolled through her contacts. I wasn't entirely honest about my background either, Jake. Before I became a veterinarian, I spent 10 years as a federal investigator specializing in agricultural fraud. I still have contacts at the FBI who've been looking for a way to nail Marcus's operation for years. Jake looked at her with new eyes, seeing the steel beneath the gentle exterior. You've been planning this from the beginning. Maria contacted me 3 months before she died, Sarah admitted. She suspected someone was trying to steal Thunder, and she knew her own life was in danger. She asked me to watch over you and the ranch if anything happened to her. I've been building a case against Marcus for 2 years, waiting for the right moment to strike. As if to punctuate her words, Thunder lifted his massive head and looked directly at them, his intelligent eyes reflecting the moonlight. In that moment, Jake understood that everything, Maria's research, Sarah's arrival, even Danny's return, had been part of a larger plan. His wife had been playing a longer game than anyone realized, setting the pieces in motion to protect what mattered most, even from beyond the grave. The war for Thunder's life, for Danny's freedom, and for justice for Maria was about to begin in earnest. The showdown came at dawn on a crisp September morning when the Texas sky was painted in shades of amber and gold that reminded Jake of better times. Marcus Caldwell arrived with a convoy that looked more like a military operation than a routine animal control procedure. 3 county trucks, 2 sheriff's deputies, and a large livestock transport trailer that would carry Thunder away forever. Danny emerged from the lead vehicle, his movements mechanical and controlled, but Jake could see the internal struggle playing out behind his son's eyes. The memories were returning in fragments, fleeting images of childhood summers, Maria's laughter echoing through the kitchen, the day Jake had taught him to ride his first horse. Each recovered memory seemed to cause Danny physical pain, as if his mind was fighting against years of carefully constructed lies. "Mr. Morrison," Marcus called out with theatrical authority, brandishing a court order like a weapon. "By the power vested in me by Jefferson County and the state of Texas, I'm here to remove the animal known as Thunder for immediate health and safety testing. Any interference with this legal proceeding will result in your immediate arrest." Jake stood between Marcus and the gate leading to Thunder's pasture, his weathered hands steady despite the chaos in his heart. Behind him, thunder grazed peacefully, unaware that this morning might be their last together. The bull's distinctive black and reddish-brown coat gleamed in the early light, and his massive frame spoke of the proud lineage that had made him so valuable and so dangerous to Marcus's plans. "You want him, you'll have to go through me," Jake said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd faced enemy fire in Vietnam and never backed down from a fight that mattered. "Pop, don't!" Danny's voice cracked as the childhood name slipped out again, causing Marcus to shoot him a sharp look of warning. "I mean, Mr. Morrison, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Sarah stepped up beside Jake, her federal credentials held high for everyone to see. "Actually, Marcus, I think you'll find that your court order has been superseded by a federal investigation." She smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting years for this moment. "FBI Agricultural Crime Division, badge number 2847. This property is now under federal protection as evidence in an ongoing investigation into livestock fraud, public corruption, and murder." The word murder hit the assembled group like a physical blow. Marcus's face went white, then flushed red with rage. "You have no authority here. This is a local matter." "Murder of Maria Morrison makes it federal," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Conspiracy to defraud the federal livestock registry makes it federal. Using county resources for personal enrichment makes it federal." "Take your pick, Marcus." Danny staggered backward as if he'd been struck. "Murder? Someone killed Maria Morrison?" His voice was thick with confusion and growing horror. "But she was like a mother to—" He stopped, his hand moving to his head as more memories crashed through the barriers Marcus had so carefully constructed. "That's right, son," Jake said gently, risking everything on the hope that his love for Danny could cut through years of lies. "Maria was your mother in every way that mattered. She loved you from the day we brought you home when you were 10 years old. She used to make your favorite chocolate chip cookies every Sunday after church." "No," Danny whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "My name is Daniel Martinez. My mother died in a car accident. Marcus told me—" "Marcus told you a lot of things," Sarah interrupted, pulling out a thick file of documents. "But federal DNA testing confirms what we already knew. You're Danny Morrison, son of Jake Morrison and Maria Morrison by adoption. You were reported missing in action in Afghanistan 5 years ago, but somehow you ended up here, working for the man who killed your mother." Marcus lunged forward, desperation making him reckless. "Daniel, don't listen to them. They're trying to confuse you, trying to use your memory problems against you. Remember your loyalty. Remember who saved you when you had nothing." But Danny was remembering something else now. Fragments of a conversation he'd overheard in Marcus's office late one night. Something about a woman who'd gotten too close to the truth, who'd had to be handled quietly before she could expose their operation. At the time, it hadn't meant anything to him. Now, with his memories returning, the pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "You killed her," Danny said, his voice barely audible. "You killed Maria because she found out about Thunder's real value." "She was going to ruin everything!" Marcus shouted, his careful facade finally cracking completely. "Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about? That bull isn't just valuable. He's the last surviving male of an extinct Brahmin bloodline. His genetic material is worth $2 million to research facilities. Maria Morrison was going to give it all away to some charity foundation." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even the sheriff's deputies, who'd arrived expecting a routine animal seizure, stepped back from Marcus as if he'd become physically dangerous. Jake felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart, which had shattered years ago when Maria died, but something deeper. The last vestiges of hope that maybe, somehow, his wife's death had been natural, that the universe wasn't quite as cruel as it seemed. "You poisoned her," Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "For months you slowly poisoned her with blood thinners, making her surgery more dangerous. You murdered my wife for money." Thunder, sensing the tension even from a distance, lifted his massive head and began walking toward the fence. The bull's dark eyes seemed to understand that something momentous was happening, that the humans who controlled his fate were finally confronting the truth that had shaped all their lives. Danny was sobbing now, memories flooding back in an unstoppable tide. He remembered the last conversation he'd had with Maria before shipping out to Afghanistan. How she'd made him promise to come home safe. How she'd given him a lucky coin that he'd carried into every mission. He remembered the day Jake had first brought him to the ranch, scared and defensive after years in foster care, and how Maria had simply handed him a plate of cookies and told him he was home now. "I remember," Danny whispered, looking at Jake with eyes that finally held recognition and love instead of vacant confusion. "I remember everything. The barn, the horses, the way Mom used to sing while she cooked, the way you taught me to fix engines in the garage." His voice broke. "I remember how much I missed you both when I was overseas." Marcus made one last desperate play, pulling a pistol from his jacket and pointing it at Thunder. "Nobody moves, or the bull dies. I've worked too hard for this to let it slip away now." But Marcus had made a fatal miscalculation. Thunder wasn't just any bull. He was a Brahmin, bred for intelligence and loyalty as much as for size and strength. The massive animal had been watching the confrontation with growing agitation, and something in Marcus's threatening posture triggered his protective instincts. With surprising speed for such a large creature, Thunder charged the fence. Not to escape, but to position himself between Marcus and Jake, the man who'd saved his life, the man who'd cared for him since he was a calf. The bull's massive frame blocked Marcus's line of fire, and his low, rumbling bellow seemed to shake the very ground. "Easy, boy," Jake called out, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Easy, Thunder. You've done good. You've done real good." The standoff lasted only moments before FBI agents, hidden in positions around the ranch since before dawn, moved in to arrest Marcus. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Marcus looked at Jake with pure hatred. "You think you've won? You'll never be able to afford the legal fees to prove Thunder's bloodline. You'll still lose everything." But Jake was no longer listening. He was watching Danny approach Thunder's fence, the young man moving with the careful confidence of someone remembering how to be himself again. Thunder lowered his massive head, allowing Danny to scratch behind his ears the way he'd done as a teenager. "Hey there, big guy," Danny murmured, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry I forgot about you. I'm sorry I forgot about all of this." As the sun climbed higher over the Morrison Ranch, painting the pastures in golden light, Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. His son was home, Thunder was safe, and Maria's killer would finally face justice. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time since losing Maria, Jake believed they might actually have a chance at happiness again. The victory celebration lasted exactly 47 minutes before everything went catastrophically wrong. Jake had barely finished embracing his son when the second wave of county vehicles arrived, these bearing the seal of the state attorney general's office. The lead car disgorged a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Assistant Attorney General Patricia Hawthorne, and the cold satisfaction in her eyes made Jake's blood freeze. "Mr. Morrison," she announced with bureaucratic precision, "I'm here to inform you that Thunder's seizure is proceeding under emergency state health protocols." New evidence has emerged suggesting your animal may be carrying a strain of bovine tuberculosis that poses an imminent threat to livestock throughout East Texas. Sarah stepped forward, her federal credentials still in hand. That's impossible. I've conducted extensive health screenings on Thunder myself. He's completely clean. Your credentials don't extend to state veterinary matters, Hawthorne replied smoothly. We have reports from 3 independent laboratories confirming the presence of suspicious pathogens in blood samples taken from this animal. She gestured to a heavily modified livestock truck that looked more like a mobile laboratory. Thunder must be removed immediately for comprehensive testing and, if necessary, humane euthanasia. Jake felt the world tilting beneath his feet. You can't just kill him based on fake test results. The tests are quite real, Mr. Morrison. Signed by Dr. Elizabeth Caldwell, state veterinary pathologist. Hawthorne's smile was razor-thin. Marcus Caldwell's sister, as it happens. Family loyalty runs deep in some circles. The revelation hit like a sledgehammer. Marcus hadn't been working alone. The corruption went deeper, reaching into state government itself. The Caldwell family had built an entire network designed to steal valuable livestock under the guise of public health protection. Danny, still struggling with returning memories but crystal clear about the present danger, stepped between the state officials and Thunder's pasture. You're not taking him anywhere. I don't care what fake documents you have. Actually, young man, interfering with a state health emergency is a felony. Hawthorne nodded to the state troopers who'd accompanied her. Remove him. As the troopers moved toward Danny, Thunder sensed the threat and charged the fence again, his massive bulk creating a living barrier between his human family and their enemies. The bull's deep bellow carried across the ranch like a war cry, and Jake could see intelligence in those dark eyes. Thunder understood exactly what was happening and had chosen his side. Stand down, officers, Sarah commanded, but her federal authority meant nothing here. State law superseded federal intervention in health emergencies, and the Caldwells had crafted their trap perfectly. Jake watched helplessly as a veterinary team began preparing sedation equipment. Thunder would be tranquilized, loaded into the truck, and driven away to die in some sterile laboratory, all perfectly legal under Texas state law. 2 years of fighting for justice, of rebuilding his shattered family, would end with him watching his wife's final gift destroyed by the very system that should have protected them. There has to be something we can do, Danny said desperately, his voice cracking with the same helpless rage Jake felt burning in his chest. But before anyone could respond, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. 3 aircraft bearing federal markings descended toward the ranch, kicking up dust clouds that obscured everyone's vision. As the helicopters touched down, armed federal agents poured out, followed by a man in an expensive suit who carried himself with unmistakable authority. Agent Michael Torres, FBI Agricultural Crime Division, he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. This ranch is now under federal protection as part of Operation Bloodline, a multi-state investigation into livestock fraud and public corruption. Hawthorne's composure cracked for the first time. You have no jurisdiction here. This is a state health matter. Not when it involves interstate commerce fraud and conspiracy to commit murder, Torres replied, pulling out a warrant thick enough to use as a weapon. Dr. Elizabeth Caldwell was arrested this morning at her laboratory in Austin. Funny thing about those blood samples, they weren't from Thunder at all. They were from cattle in a disease research facility 3 states away. The bottom fell out of Jake's world again, but this time in the opposite direction. Sarah grabbed his arm, her grip tight with excitement. Jake, do you understand what this means? Thunder isn't just valuable. He's the centerpiece of a federal investigation. They can't touch him now. But Jake was looking at Danny, seeing something in his son's face that chilled him to the bone. Danny was staring at Thunder with an expression of profound grief, as if he were looking at something already lost. "Danny?" Jake called softly. "Son, what is it?" "The surgery," Danny whispered, his voice barely audible. "When Marcus found me in that field hospital in Afghanistan, I wasn't just suffering from memory loss. I had massive internal injuries, brain trauma from an IED explosion. The doctor said I needed experimental treatment to survive." Sarah went pale. "What kind of treatment?" "Gene therapy. Experimental cellular regeneration using animal DNA to repair brain tissue." Danny's words came out in a rush, as if he were trying to outrun their implications. "Marcus arranged for the treatment through his sister's research contacts. The DNA they used came from highly intelligent animals, animals with proven genetic markers for problem-solving and emotional intelligence." Jake felt his knees weaken as understanding crashed over him. "Thunder! They used Thunder's genetic material to save my life," Danny confirmed, tears streaming down his face. "I'm alive because part of Thunder is literally inside me, and now they want to kill him to harvest more genetic material, to create an entire line of enhanced therapy treatments." The moral complexity of the situation hit everyone simultaneously. Thunder's DNA had saved Danny's life, but now that same genetic material was making the bull a target for exploitation. The very treatment that had given Jake his son back might cost him the last living connection to Maria. Hawthorne, sensing an opportunity in the confusion, pressed her advantage. "You see, this animal represents a breakthrough in medical science. The state has a compelling interest in preserving this genetic line for research that could save thousands of lives. By killing Thunder," Jake's voice carried the weight of absolute moral authority, "by turning a living, breathing creature into nothing more than a laboratory specimen?" "Sometimes sacrifice is necessary for the greater good," Hawthorne replied coldly. Thunder, as if understanding the conversation about his fate, walked slowly to the fence where Jake stood. The massive bull lowered his head, allowing Jake to touch the white scars where the python's coils had nearly killed him. In that moment, Jake felt the profound connection that had sustained him through 2 years of grief and loss. The bond between man and animal that transcended mere ownership, that spoke to something eternal about love and loyalty. "No," Jake said simply. "Not this sacrifice." "Not this time." Danny stepped up beside his father, placing his own hand on Thunder's neck. "Pop's right. I'm grateful to be alive, but I won't let Thunder die for genetic material that's already inside me. If they need DNA for research, they can use mine." The offer hung in the air like a lifeline, but Jake saw the trap immediately. Volunteering for medical research would mean Danny disappearing into the same system that had nearly destroyed him once before. The choice between losing Thunder and losing Danny again was no choice at all. It was simply another form of torture. As if responding to their emotional turmoil, Thunder lifted his massive head and looked directly at Jake with those intelligent dark eyes. In that gaze, Jake saw something that stopped his heart: acceptance. Thunder understood the choice his human family faced, and with the profound wisdom that some animals possess, he was trying to tell them that love sometimes meant letting go. The sun was setting over the Morrison Ranch, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that reminded Jake of Maria's favorite sunset. Somewhere in that beautiful dying light, a decision would have to be made that would determine not just Thunder's fate, but the very soul of the family Jake was fighting so desperately to rebuild. The battle for Thunder's life had become a battle for the meaning of family itself, and Jake was no longer sure which side was winning. The truth arrived in the form of a weathered manila envelope that Sarah pulled from her jacket with trembling hands. As the federal agents and state officials faced off around Thunder's pasture, she opened the envelope and withdrew a stack of documents that would change everything Jake thought he knew about his life. "Maria left these with my attorney 2 years ago," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Instructions to open them only if something happened to Thunder." She looked at Jake with eyes full of pain and love. "Jake, I haven't been entirely honest with you about who I am." Jake felt his world tilting again. "What do you mean?" "My real name is Sarah Chen Martinez, and I'm not just Maria's sister." Sarah's hand shook as she held up an FBI badge that looked far more official than the veterinary credentials she'd been carrying. "I'm a federal undercover agent who's been investigating the Caldwell network for 3 years. Maria contacted the FBI when she first suspected Thunder was being targeted, and I was assigned to protect both of you." The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. "So everything between us, it's all been a lie?" "No." Sarah's voice cracked with desperation. "My feelings for you are real, Jake. They were never part of the assignment. I came here to protect you and fell in love with you despite every professional instinct I had." But Jake was no longer listening. He was staring at the document Sarah had pulled from the envelope, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. Medical records, genetic test results, and a letter in Maria's familiar handwriting that began with words that would haunt him forever. "My dearest Jake, if you're reading this, then the lies I've been living have finally caught up with all of us." "What lies?" Jake whispered, though part of him already knew he didn't want to hear the answer. Sarah's face was pale as moonlight. "Jake, Thunder isn't just valuable because of his bloodline. He's valuable because he's been genetically modified. Maria worked for a secret government program before she met you, Project Shepherd. They were developing enhanced livestock for military applications, animals with human-level intelligence and emotional capacity." The words hit Jake like bullets. "That's impossible. Thunder's just a bull. He's smart, but he's not. Look at his behavior, Jake. Really look at it." Danny's voice was quiet but certain. "The way he positions himself to protect us, the way he seems to understand conversations, the way he knew to block Marcus's truck when we needed time, that's not normal animal intelligence." Jake's mind reeled as he remembered countless incidents over the years. Thunder's uncanny ability to sense danger, the way he seemed to respond to human emotions, his almost supernatural connection to Maria during her illness. Things he'd attributed to the special bond between animal and human suddenly took on a more sinister meaning. "Maria was the lead scientist on Project Shepherd," Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "She created Thunder in a laboratory, using cutting-edge genetic engineering to enhance his cognitive abilities. But when she realized what the military planned to do with her research, create super-intelligent animals for warfare, she stole Thunder and disappeared. She came to Texas, assumed a new identity, and met you. So, our entire life together was built on a lie?" Jake's voice was hollow with betrayal. "No, Jake." Sarah pulled out another document, a handwritten letter that bore Maria's signature. "She fell in love with you and wanted to leave her old life behind completely, but she knew that someday someone would come for Thunder. That's why she contacted me, why she set up all these safeguards. She was trying to protect the family she'd found with you." Thunder, as if sensing the emotional turmoil around him, walked closer to the fence. His massive head turned toward each person in turn, and Jake could swear he saw understanding in those dark eyes, not just animal instinct, but genuine comprehension of the conversation about his true nature. Agent Torres stepped forward, his expression grim. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand something. Thunder isn't just evidence in a corruption case. He's a classified military asset that's been missing for 6 years. The Department of Defense wants him back." "Over my dead body," Jake said quietly, but his voice carried the weight of absolute determination. That might not be your choice to make, Torres replied. The Caldwells were working for a private defense contractor that's been trying to locate Project Shepherd assets. They've been systematically tracking down and recovering enhanced animals for reverse engineering. Thunder is the last one. Danny stepped closer to his father, his face set with resolve. Then we fight, all of us, together. But even as he spoke, military helicopters appeared on the horizon, black aircraft with no visible markings that spoke of operations conducted in the shadows of government secrecy. Jake watched them approach with a growing sense of despair. How could one aging rancher, his damaged son, and an undercover agent possibly stand against the combined might of the military-industrial complex? Sarah grabbed Jake's arm, her grip desperate. There's one more thing in Maria's envelope, a video message she recorded before she died. With shaking hands, Sarah pulled out a small digital device and activated it. Maria's face appeared on the screen, but this wasn't the woman Jake remembered. This Maria looked haunted, exhausted, and terrified. "Jake, my darling," Maria's recorded voice said, "if you're watching this, then they've found us, and I'm probably dead. I'm so sorry for the lies, for the danger I've brought to our family, but I need you to know that everything I feel for you and Danny is real. You gave me a life worth living, and I pray that somehow you can forgive me for the secrets I had to keep." Jake found himself crying as Maria's image continued. "Thunder isn't just an animal, Jake. He's capable of love, of grief, of complex thought and emotion. In many ways, he's as human as any of us. The military will say he's property, a weapon to be controlled and exploited. But you and I know better. He's family." The video message continued with technical details about Thunder's genetic modifications, security codes that could protect him from government seizure, and most importantly, legal documents that Maria had filed in international courts recognizing Thunder as a sentient being with rights under emerging animal consciousness laws. "She's right," Danny said softly, watching Thunder graze peacefully despite the chaos around him. "He's not just an animal, he's family. And you don't abandon family no matter who comes for them." The military helicopters were circling now, preparing to land. Federal agents were arguing with state officials while the Caldwell Network's corruption investigation continued to unravel in real time. But at the center of it all stood Thunder, magnificent, intelligent, and completely unaware that his very existence challenged everything humans thought they knew about the boundaries between species. Agent Torres received a message on his radio that made his face go pale. "Mr. Morrison, I've just been informed that this operation is being transferred to military jurisdiction. I'm being ordered to stand down." "Like hell," Sarah said, pulling out her own radio. "This is Agent Chen, FBI Agricultural Division. I'm invoking the Whistleblower Protection Act and declaring this entire operation a violation of international animal rights treaties. Thunder is under federal protection as a classified informant in an ongoing investigation." The legal maneuvering was impressive, but Jake could see it was ultimately futile. The military had resources that dwarfed anything the FBI could bring to bear. Thunder would be taken, studied, and probably dissected to unlock the secrets of his enhanced genetics. The bull who had saved Jake's life, who had embodied Maria's love and sacrifice, would become nothing more than a laboratory specimen. But as the military helicopters touched down and soldiers began deploying around the ranch, Thunder did something that changed everything. The massive bull walked to the center of his pasture, lowered his head toward Jake, and began to vocalize, not the typical lowing of cattle, but something that sounded almost like human speech. "Dad, love." The words were barely recognizable, distorted by vocal cords never meant to form human language, but the intent was unmistakable. Thunder was speaking, demonstrating the very intelligence that made him so valuable and so dangerous. In that moment, Jake understood that the battle for Thunder's freedom had become something much larger, a fight for the very definition of personhood, consciousness, and the rights of beings caught between human and animal worlds. The truth had been revealed, but the real war was just beginning. The Christmas morning sun painted the Morrison Ranch in shades of gold and amber that would have made Maria smile. 6 months had passed since the standoff that changed everything, and Jake Morrison stood on his front porch watching his family come together in ways he'd never dared to dream possible. Thunder grazed peacefully in the main pasture, his magnificent frame casting a long shadow across the frost-kissed grass. The battle for his freedom had been won not through violence or legal maneuvering, but through the power of truth broadcast to the world. When Thunder's halting words had been captured on dozens of cell phone cameras and uploaded to social media, the footage went viral within hours. The image of a genetically enhanced bull pleading for his life in broken human speech had sparked a global conversation about animal consciousness and rights that no military classification could suppress. The international outcry had been swift and decisive. Animal rights organizations, scientists, and ordinary people who'd been moved by Thunder's plight had demanded answers about Project Shepherd and the secret military programs that had created him. Congressional hearings had been launched, laws had been changed, and Thunder had become the first non-human animal to be granted legal personhood under federal protection statutes. But the real victory wasn't legal or political, it was personal. Danny had recovered fully from his memory loss, though he'd chosen to remain on the ranch rather than returning to military service. The young man who'd once been lost between two identities had found his purpose in caring for Thunder and helping other veterans struggling with PTSD through a therapeutic program they'd established on the ranch. "Pop, you ready for this?" Danny called from the barn where he was preparing Thunder for the day's special visitors. The ranch had become a sanctuary for enhanced animals recovered from various military programs, and Thunder had taken on the role of patriarch to a growing family of genetically modified livestock who were learning to live as free beings rather than military assets. Sarah emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of coffee and Maria's famous Christmas cookies, a recipe she'd learned from the journals Maria had left behind. The year had been a journey of discovery for both of them as they'd navigated the transition from professional partnership to genuine love. Jake had struggled with guilt about moving on from Maria, but a final video message from his late wife had given him permission to find happiness again. "You know," Sarah said, settling beside Jake on the porch swing, "I never imagined when I took this assignment that I'd end up with a ready-made family and a ranch full of super-intelligent farm animals." Jake chuckled, pulling her closer against the morning chill. "And I never imagined I'd be married to a federal agent who can birth a calf and arrest corrupt officials with equal skill." Their wedding had been a small affair held right here on the ranch, with Thunder serving as an unofficial witness. The bull had worn a garland of flowers around his neck and had actually managed to vocalize something that sounded like "I do" when the minister had asked if anyone objected to the union. The video of Thunder's wedding blessing had become another viral sensation, cementing his status as the world's most famous bovine. The sound of approaching vehicles broke the peaceful morning quiet. A convoy of cars was making its way up the gravel driveway. Journalists, scientists, and dignitaries who'd come to witness the first anniversary of Thunder's legal recognition as a sentient being. But leading the procession was a familiar pickup truck that made Jake's heart swell with pride. His brother, Michael Morrison, climbed out of the truck, followed by his wife and 3 children who'd driven from Oklahoma to be part of the celebration. Behind them came old friends and neighbors who'd supported Jake through the darkest period of his life, when it seemed like everything he'd built would be lost to corruption and greed. But the most important arrival was the last one, a modest sedan that pulled up to the house with the quiet dignity of its elderly occupant. Elena Vasquez, now 83 years old, moved slowly but with purpose as Danny helped her from the car. She'd been Maria's mentor at the agricultural college where Maria had first developed her love of animal husbandry, and she'd traveled from Mexico to be present for this momentous day. "Mijo," Elena said to Jake, using the Spanish endearment that Maria had taught her years ago. "She would be so proud of what you've accomplished here." Maria always believed that love could overcome any obstacle, and you've proven her right. As the morning progressed, the ranch filled with visitors who'd come to pay their respects to Thunder and to witness the dedication of the Maria Morrison Center for Animal Consciousness Studies. The facility, built with settlement money from the lawsuit against the Caldwell Network, would serve as a research center where scientists could study enhanced animals in a natural environment rather than laboratory conditions. Thunder seemed to understand the significance of the day. He positioned himself near the dedication ceremony, his intelligent eyes taking in the crowd of humans who'd gathered to celebrate his freedom. When Dr. Patricia Wells, the lead researcher at the new center, began her speech about the groundbreaking work they'd be conducting, Thunder actually nodded his massive head in apparent approval. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Wells announced, "today we begin a new chapter in our understanding of consciousness, intelligence, and the bonds that connect all living beings. Thunder and the other residents of this sanctuary will help us explore questions that challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of personhood itself." But the most moving moment came when Danny stepped forward to address the crowd. The young man who'd once been lost between two identities now spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who'd found his true purpose. "My mother, Maria Morrison, created Thunder in a laboratory," Danny began, his voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd. "But she also taught me that love isn't about how something is created. It's about how it's nurtured, protected, and cherished. Thunder isn't just a scientific breakthrough or a legal precedent. He's family. And family means you never give up on each other no matter what." As if responding to Danny's words, Thunder walked slowly to the fence nearest the ceremony. The massive bull lowered his head toward the crowd and in his halting, carefully practiced voice spoke the words that brought tears to every eye present. "Thank you for my freedom." The applause that followed wasn't polite or ceremonial. It was the sound of hearts breaking and healing simultaneously, of people witnessing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the boundaries between human and animal consciousness. Later that evening, as the last visitors departed and the ranch settled into peaceful quiet, Jake found himself sitting by Thunder's fence with Sarah and Danny, watching the stars emerge in the clear Texas sky. Thunder stood nearby, his presence a comforting reminder of all they'd overcome together. "You know what the best part is?" Sarah mused, her head resting on Jake's shoulder. "We didn't just save Thunder. We proved that love really can triumph over systems designed to exploit and destroy. Maria's legacy isn't just the scientific breakthrough she achieved, it's the family she helped create and the principles she taught us to fight for." Danny reached through the fence to scratch Thunder's neck, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "I've been thinking about Mom's last video message," he said quietly. "She said Thunder was capable of love, grief, and complex thought. But I think she missed something important." "What's that?" Jake asked. "Hope," Danny replied. "Thunder never gave up hope that someday he'd be free to just be himself. Even when everything seemed hopeless, he kept believing that love would find a way. That's what kept him going, and that's what kept all of us going." As if to punctuate Danny's words, Thunder moved closer to the fence and gently nuzzled Jake's shoulder, a gesture of affection that spoke louder than any words could express. In that moment, Jake felt Maria's presence as clearly as if she were sitting beside them, her love for all of them transcending death itself. The Morrison Ranch had become more than a sanctuary for enhanced animals. It had become a testament to the power of family, the importance of fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and the eternal truth that love, once given freely, creates bonds that can never be broken. Under the vast Texas sky, with thunder standing guard over the family that had fought so hard to stay together, Jake Morrison finally understood what Maria had been trying to tell him all along. Some gifts are too precious to be owned, too sacred to be exploited, and too powerful to be destroyed by those who see only profit where others see miracles. Thunder was free, Danny was home, Sarah was family, and Maria's dream of a world where love transcended the boundaries between species had finally come true. Sometimes the greatest miracles aren't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when love refuses to surrender. Jake Morrison's story reminds us that even when life strips away everything we thought we couldn't live without, our spouse, our financial security, our sense of purpose, family has a way of finding us again in the most unexpected forms. At 54, Jake had lost his beloved Maria and faced losing the ranch that represented 3 generations of dreams. But through thunder, a remarkable bull who became more than livestock, Jake discovered that the bonds we forge through compassion and sacrifice create a legacy that transcends loss itself. This story speaks to every one of us who've wondered if our best years are behind us, if second chances are real, or if love can bloom again after devastating heartbreak. Jake found that protecting what we cherish most, whether it's family, principles, or the innocent creatures who depend on us, gives our lives meaning that no bank account or career achievement can match. In our golden years, we have the wisdom to recognize that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of our connections and the courage to fight for what matters. What unexpected blessing has taught you the most about resilience? Have you ever found family in the most surprising places? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.